Good morning. Welcome to the Light on Suitability podcast. I'm with my wonderful co-hosts, guest co-hosts, Joe Haytas, Michael G. Good. I'm Elizabeth C. And Joe Haytas is the author of 36 Strategies of Suitability. We've been talking about this over the course of a year, I think. I don't know. How long has it been, Michael?
Since June last year when I started, and you'd already started then.
We'd already started. So yeah, Joe and I have been working on this for a year. By the time we get finished with this book, he'll be publishing his next book and we'll be talking about that one, I'm sure.
Nice.
He looks surprised. He looks under pressure. No, I'm just joking. It'll be fine.
Michael has a book, doesn't he? Coming out too?
We can do Michael's book as well.
You talked about that as well.
I love that. That'll give you time to finish yours, Joe.
So I have that one, and I'm getting ready to publish another one about the 7 pillars of accountability and insight.
Wow.
Cool.
I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, I can't wait for that one too. So we're talking about, speaking of insight, Joe's chapter. I lost track of the chapter number. I think it's in the
30
show description, but insight. So why don't you help us understand what this chapter is about and how it helps our clients, your loved ones, the viewers, listeners, the 100 viewers that we have, about insight. Joe, take it away.
Well, insight, it's all about knowing yourself, going back to the earliest times in your life and looking at it and figuring out why you became the person you became. Like, what were the points in your past that influenced you? Who were the people that influenced you? What situations did you experience? What trauma did you experience? And how did that affect the way you adapted to the world? And it's going back as far as you possibly can of what you remember. And it probably wasn't all very, very good, obviously, because your experience, the trauma, the way you interacted with others, and the way others interacted with you. It's all about knowing yourself and seeing the progression, seeing where, kind of the train went off the tracks, if you will. For some, it was really early. Maybe others, it wasn't so early. Going into your teen years, remembering the first time that you perhaps did something negative, breaking the law, how you felt, how others, maybe you were encouraged, others encouraged you about it, and that kind of, you felt acceptance and you kept going in that direction. Like I said, it's all about knowing the self and how you got to where you're at. There's a lot of self-awareness involved. And how do you do it? Well, there's a number of ways. The thing is for you to find the way that works for you. It might be writing it out, like doing a journal, retro journaling, like back in your past, asking yourself questions. I believe there's some questions in the chapter as well that you can ask yourself. So it's all about learning about the self and how you got to be where you are, the things that, compelled you to commit the crime, even though you knew it was wrong. I mean, intellectually, maybe even emotionally, we knew it was wrong, but the things inside of us, who we were at the time, pushed us forward to go and do it, even though we knew it was against the law. We knew it was going to hurt somebody. There's victims. But despite the consequences, we went ahead and did it anyways. And the why of that. And then once you have that, then you can start. And by the way, once you have that and being brutally honest with yourself, then you can address it. So whatever it was that you had, whether it was criminal thinking, substance abuse, anger. It can be anything negative. Then you have to address it, and that's what self-help is all about. And that's the take on insight.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, it's understanding just the why. And the commissioners want to know, why on earth did this have to happen? And ultimately, it's because, the causative factors of our childhoods shape who we are, and they create character defects in us. They, you know what it is? It's blocked feelings. So when you're a little kid and things happen to you, bad things happen, whatever it is, it can be really what we think of really awful, or it can be something that maybe in contrast doesn't seem that awful, but it creates a feeling. Okay. And after a while, when those feelings don't get nurtured, supported, repaired, any of the stuff that's supposed to happen in a functioning, healthy home, then you start to believe that those feelings are bad, and you start to suppress them, get them out of the way. And the next thing we do is, so then we start to think. When we start thinking, that's our worst thing that we could ever do, because we stop feeling and we stop, processing through the feelings. We don't learn how to do it, and we start thinking. What does our thinking do? Nothing good. Nothing good. What it does is it starts to create a belief system of things, and those belief systems are sort of like these replacements for what should have been the feelings that should have been processed feelings. So then you've got these belief systems, and these belief systems then over time they cement into these character defects. And then how do you handle that? It's all interwoven. All this insight is a big topic. And so then it's all interwoven into triggers, because what happens then is something from what happened before as a childhood trauma triggers you in a similar way when you're an adult. And then your amygdala remembers that stuffed feeling, and it reacts and responds, and it does because it thinks you're in danger. Okay, because ultimately all this stuff, even a terrible crime, is ultimately an expression of your mind, that part of your brain that says, we're in danger, we have to do something about this. And then it reacts and responds to that danger. That's really that old stuffed core wound that is being expressed. Because when you suppress something, it's like a tube of toothpaste. You've got the lid on it, but it's got a bunch of holes in it. And if you start squeezing, that toothpaste is coming out one way or the other. And I truly believe that is what goes on with most of these. And I think that really the commissioners, on a basic level, for most of them, understand that. And therefore, if you can bring awareness to how this, trajectory happened, and how you came to have a trigger that you did a fight or flight, and for most of our clients, it's a fight thing, right? It's a respond to danger with a physical action. And in the case of rape, or not necessarily even rape, but child molest, this is a very sensitive topic. It's a starving for love that was never got and never resolved and never addressed. There's no therapy given for it. It's just stuffed. And then something starts to happen, and then it manifests itself on there. And, I want to be really careful on YouTube, because it doesn't really understand the context of what we're talking about. But, and it's easy to talk about gang crimes and things like that for why it triggers that way. The trajectory is quite easy to understand, but ultimately it's from old core wound being hurt as a child, not receiving the appropriate stimulus, and work your way all the way through, because you can have these intervening things that happen. You might have a positive aunt or something in your life, or a coach or something in your life that says that you were able to tell, my dad's a real jerk and this and that. Oh, that's sorry, kid. That shouldn't be happening at home. Hey, but you've got the team. We're here for you or whatever. And that can be an intervening thing that can cut that off without it being suppressed. And there's a slight bit of repair, or there's a slight bit of showing that that maybe something going on at home isn't right. And maybe you can accept that and then you can carry on. But for a lot of kids, they don't have that. They've got, they're stuck in neighborhoods that are crappy. Mom doesn't have money for the soccer team thing or whatever it is. But ultimately, it's that core wound travels all the way to the ultimate trigger. And there are triggers along the way, but it's like with any addiction that we've all talked about, it's always the more. And so when your brain, anger is like a dopamine hit, by the way, for a lot of us, for many of us. Negative emotions are a dopamine hit. And that dopamine hit at the moment of the, retaliating against the gang member. I'll just use the easy thing, not easy for the victims. I'm just saying easier to explain.
We understand
as a concept, that dopamine hit is there in that moment as well. Or I think it's dopamine, not serotonin, but anyway. So, that's my Sunday take on it. And let's see what Michael's got to say for himself on this topic.
All right. So I like what you said, Elizabeth, but we're going to expand on that a little bit further. Working with a bunch of lifers over the last decade and a half, we've come to really understand that what people call causative factors can actually be broken down even further into what we classified as causative and contributing factors. All right. So the contributing factors, as we define them, are the traumas that we experience through life that help us develop certain behaviors and thought patterns. All right. So, like the childhood neglect, abuse, lack of love, and like in my case, the positive reinforcement from my mother and my cousins to play poker and help really develop my gambling addiction. Then we defined the causative factors as the series of triggers and events that led up to our life crime that led us to make a series of bad decisions leading to the decision to commit our life crime. In my case, it was a murder. So being able to identify these various things, one of the questions that the commissioner asked me, what happened that night? Okay, being able to use the causative factors of those triggers that led up to that event and my course of thinking along that line helped me define my insight into what actually happened that night. And, had I just stuck with the whole, causative contributing or the causative factors as being the blanket answer, I think I would have had a lot of blame on other people like I had in the past. But really, it was those contributing factors that built up the habits that I had. All right? It was the beliefs that I had. Somebody contributed to developing all these. And the commissioners want to know where we developed our habits, our anger, our gambling addictions, our drug addictions, our need to feel part of a gang. And, figuring out what contributed to that was important for me. And then being able to pinpoint when this whole chain of events started, the causative factors for it for me, really kind of helped me define the series of events that led up to my life crime. Because every step of the way, I made a decision. I reacted to something that was either said or done, whether initiated by me or not. And most of the time it was initiated by me, let's face it. You know, I reacted badly to a lot of things. I made a lot of bad decisions. And it comes down to being able to identify each trigger along the way that led to that. And by separating them into these two categories, for me and a lot of the guys, actually gives us some clarity on how to define our past traumas and our past events that led to certain behaviors, and identifying why we committed our crime. And I think that really helped me when I sat down and board, being able to distinguish the two. And it actually gave me a lot of clarity into my gambling addiction. It gave me a lot of clarity into the criminality I had before I committed my life crime. And it really gave me a lot of insight into why I, at that moment where I felt desperate enough that I chose, and that's the key there. It all comes down to making a choice. I chose to kill a man in that moment. And, you know, it was a really hard awakening when I fully realized the gravity of what I did and the gravity of why I did it. When we go through this process, it's not going to be easy. You know, that's about the only thing I can promise you with that. It will not be easy. There's going to be, you know, a lot of heartache. There's going to be a lot of confusion getting there. There's going to be a lot of tears. But I think the biggest thing, though, is when I found that moment where I had that just aha awakening, working through all my insight, I don't know. I think I felt it was a bag of mixed emotions. I mean, it was really heartbreaking, but at the same time, it was cleansing, because now I could identify what it was about me that led me to make these decisions, what it was about me that made me feel I had to make these decisions, and what made me feel so desperate. And, you know, in this whole thing, yeah, there were people who contributed along the way to my anger issues, my low self-esteem, my gambling addiction, all that. But when it comes down to it, I think the ultimate insight here is there is any point along that chain of events that I could have stopped and asked for help. You know, I could have. And realizing that I could have asked for help and didn't, because I chose not to, really defined and really clarified a lot of things. And it helped me get to where I am now, because now I understand that asking for help is probably the strongest thing somebody can do. But yeah, it's that moment of insight, though. When you find true insight, you'll know it. Because the empathy, the remorse, the regret, the sorrow, it'll all come to the forefront. And, you know, it'll let you see your victim's face in a true light and realize what you did and take accountability for it. And, you know, really, that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, that's right. Some of the commissioners, however, be mindful that contributing factors for some of these commissioners, you know, and the words get blended up, is the contributing factors are gangs, drugs, and things like that. Things that add to the mix that aren't necessarily connected with your internal processes. And causative factors, yes, it's tricky. The way I tell my clients to talk about the crime, I always remind them, if at all possible, and the question can be answered with an I statement, then do that. But if they are getting to the ultimate, how did you get these character defects? Then that does relate to causative factors. And the causative factors are internal and external. External meaning dad was abusive, mom was not home, whatever. And the internal being those feelings, thoughts, belief systems that you had. So I always tell my clients, you're not wrong for feeling bad because you suffered abuse, but you have to take responsibility for the thought processes that resulted and then that were not taken care of. Because if you don't manage your thoughts, it's like where your attention goes, energy flows, or whatever they say, what you focus on and all that. So sometimes that distinction between the definitions can be tricky, because the commissioners, in fact, I think it was Cassidy and some of these other old-timey commissioners are the ones that really, make that distinction. Now, if you do get the words mixed up, they are forgiving, as long as you know your stuff. You've got to know, why is this man dead? Why was that woman assaulted, et cetera, et cetera. They really want to know. And if you do have a heartfelt, genuine explanation, you usually get credit for having insight. And if you don't have insight, it's so hard to explain to clients why it's necessary to know why you did your crime. And they do say it in the decisions, because if you don't know why you did what you did, you're bound to repeat it. And they repeat that from the California Supreme Court. And the California Supreme Court sort of, I don't know, maybe they made it up from there, but I do think it's true. An unexamined life isn't worth living, so to speak. Maybe. What do you think, Joe?
Okay. Sorry about that. My mic was muted. Okay. I have another take on insight as well. So just bear with me here. We got to go back to the beginning. We're born. Soon after we're born, we start learning to navigate the world around us. We adapt to survive in our mostly hostile surroundings. Early on, we learn by experience that the world is not a safe and nurturing place, but is one filled with unpredictability, danger, fear. Our senses, instead of being delighted by new discoveries, become attuned to signs of danger. The comforting touch we crave may be absent, replaced by harshness or neglect. Our movements are hesitant, our exploration curtailed by anxiety. Our world becomes small and confined, limited by the boundaries of our fear. We learn to communicate, but our cries may go unanswered, our words unheard. Our language becomes one of survival, our expressions a mask, hiding our true feelings. We must learn to survive in this hellish jungle of where we exist. Seeking acceptance, we start to form relationships, but they're tainted by mistrust. The bonds we form may be fragile and unstable, providing little security or comfort. We learn about emotions, but they are overwhelming and confusing. Joy and love are overshadowed by fear and sadness. Achievement and discovery marred by constant stress and adversity. We start to ask, but our questions stem from a place of fear and uncertainty. Our imagination is haunted by what ifs and worst case scenarios. Our creativity stifled by the need for self-preservation. We start to shape our identity, but it is shaped more by our trauma than by our true selves. Our values and beliefs are skewed by our experiences. Our passions and interests suppressed, our strengths overlooked, and our weaknesses magnified. Our traumas teach us to cope in unhealthy ways. We see others in our world drinking, doing drugs. We want to be like these grown-ups or these cool people. We model their behavior. We see the violence perpetrated on others, sometimes even in our own family, and at our young, impressionable age, we think it's the normal way to treat others. We see people in our immediate environment lashing out at others with anger. We see others hurt, and along the way, we are hurt as well. Most are unaware of this process and how we adapted to the world around us. This was the real world programming that left us with impressions and influences and shaped our behavior to adapt to our personal environment. We took those impressions and influences out into the world to unconsciously share our pain with others by making them the same victims that we have become ourselves. No matter where we go, we continue to carry the weight of our trauma with us, a constant reminder of our past, and on. We cannot escape the quicksand, sinking deeper and deeper, sucking us down until we become completely submerged, unable to breathe. We find ourselves doing life in prison.
Wow, was that a poem? Did you write that, or some kind of a...
Some kind of a what?
Where did you read that from?
My new book.
Oh, wow. Cool. Yeah, it's almost poem-like.
Yeah, the whole book isn't like that, but one day I just got into, writing, and it's been rewritten like 10 times, but yeah.
Love it, Joe. That's awesome. You'll be the new Walt Whitman here any minute.
Hell no. I don't want to be Walt Whitman or anybody. I just want to be
No?
Joe Haytas.
You are Joe. Joe
Okay.
is Joe. Good answer. Very good answer.
I want to be more like Elizabeth Comeau
I wouldn't.
and Michael G.
I'm walking in my shoes. No.
All right. See, we all have our cross that we carry, we all have our burdens on our shoulders.
Yeah. That's so true. So
Mhm.
what's the next chapter for next week? Not to short shrift insight, because it's a huge thing, but it's really kind of a self-directed study. I mean, you can't really start talking about, well, why did these things happen? Because it really requires an unpacking of someone's personal history. And that's just the way to start it. It's like, you go back and start journaling, like one of you said, on what the heck happened. And I'll tell you, very difficult process. And if your loved one is starting an insight process, it takes a gentle, easy does it sort of wading into that pool, because it can bring up a lot of stuff, and it has caused a lot of triggers in clients where they've relapsed because it's too much. And so it just takes an easy does it, because really seeing something and having to process your own grief over being a victim that probably was never processed is it can be very difficult to really peel back the layers, because a lot of us just stuff, like I said, we just stuff the feelings and go, oh my God, my mother was a blah, 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 or my father did this and that. And it's like, those are suppressed emotions, repressed memories, and things like that. It's all real because we live from survival. I'm not sure. So I'll tell you about the brain before we go, because everybody's really interested. But Joe Dispenza.
May I say one more thing before you change the
Please.
subject there?
Yeah.
I want to say, though, that the good news is everything about us, the answers all lie inside of us. We just have to explore and get to it. And it's not easy, but everybody has lived their own life, and everything we've done is kind of imprinted on our brain, if you will. And so the answers already lie inside of us. It's just a matter of going in and exploring and saying, hey, this happened here, and this caused me to do this.
Whoops.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Joe.
Michael's phone again is
echoing again. So one of the things I just want to let people know is there's no one set formula for finding insights. The only thing that's consistent is the willingness to do the work and, take that exploration.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have to go through years of therapy. Some people do a lot of self-help. Some people do a lot of journaling and soul searching. What works for me may not work for you. So find what works for you and just put in the work.
Excellent points, Michael.
Yeah, really excellent points. Of course. Yeah, you've got to do the work. Meditation, journaling, very powerful processes. Have to be careful. If you have mental illness, sometimes meditation can be contraindicated. Just, tread lightly, journaling. But journaling, it takes what's in your brain and puts it out of the brain, because the brain just likes to spin and spin all the time. Like the reptile brain is working in the back. That's the trigger. That's the trigger when you haven't done the work so that your neocortex or your prefrontal cortex can do its work. That's the instant survival, fight, flight, and freeze. That's the fear of being attacked or the need to defend. And then you've got your limbic brain, and that's the emotional, runs through your nervous system, I believe, where your emotions, your memory, your hippocampus, you've got the memory and those conditioned responses. Those all develop along the way. And then you've got your neocortex. And that's what the commissioners, through this process of talking about insight, are really hoping that someone has really developed that, the reasoning, the decision-making, the imagination, the quote insight, so that, and like Joe just mentioned, really important, it's that choice point, the voice of your true self, the one that's going to make the good decisions, and not the reptile brain that just acts on like animals, just instant instinct. So yeah, we really want to meditation, journaling is a powerful two-step process that's extremely powerful when done repetition wise. And this stuff is not just like, oh, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to figure out why this happened or that happened or why I'm the way I am or whatever it is. It's going to be a process, and a long process. I'm not talking you sit down with the state appointed lawyer 4 months before your hearing and you're going to all of a sudden have insight. This is probably the commissioners or somebody decided that it was 6 years. It might take you 6 years to figure this out. Okay, because they come and talk to you. They're supposed to come and talk to you 6 years before your hearing. So somebody along the line thought that 6 years it might take you to get the self-helps, to be able to stop committing the RVRs, because you want to show by your words or by your actions that your prefrontal cortex is operating in a good way and you're making good decisions for yourself, and through your articulation of insight. And I don't know, somebody decides 6 years. So Michael, you want to jump in? I'm going to mute so that it doesn't echo.
So, one of the things I've noticed over the years watching people get ready for board, I've sat in the day room watching people get ready, and they'll sit there 12, 14 hours a day, 2 months before board, trying to cram everything in. And then they come back and they're just shocked that they got a denial. This is something we have to start on, like Elizabeth said, years and years and years before. And we pray to God that we get to that point to where we have that insight by the time our chance to go to board comes around. It's just like anything else in recovery. gaining insight is not just going through and doing the work. It's once we start getting to where we've done the work and we're consistently living and understanding the lessons we've learned, we have to live those lessons. We have to live what we've learned through this. And that's the difference between somebody who's, done the work and they're living these experiences and they're living these tools than somebody who's constantly just trying to work everything. Somebody asked me one day at my Gamblers Anonymous meeting, well, how do you work the steps? I don't. I live them. And living the process of doing all this, I think, is so important, especially it was, I think, the cornerstone of both my recovery and my walking out those gates was living the lessons that I've learned. And that goes with everything from recovery to insight. Because when we finally find insight, we're going to learn a whole lot of lessons between here and there. And, had I not started living those lessons, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to get my brown card going back into a prison. I wouldn't have had a chance to work with the youth that I work with. I'd still be sitting in prison somewhere. So, for me, and, I firmly believe this, living these lessons is key, not just studying them and working them. So.
Yeah, that's for sure, Michael. Really powerful. And I think the steps, I keep saying this over and over in the last year, I believe, the steps are a very good, they're just a guide you can use, your loved one can use to help guide the insight, because the steps contain all of it. They contain all of it. Maybe not so much the causative factors, but you can work backward to get to those causative factors from step 4. From step 1, you have to identify the problem. If you can't identify the problem, you're not going to find a solution. Step 12, having that spiritual awakening can also really help you, because when you can connect to the voice of God, which is within you, which is within all of us, like Joe mentioned, you're going to get some answers as well. You're just going to when you sit quietly in meditation, the answers will come. The memories will start to reappear, and you'll start to figure it out. And it's not easy work. It's called shadow work, is another name for it. Young like to call it shadow work, and you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't need a label. It just is really hard work. Step 11, prayer and meditation. When you don't know what to do, pray. What do they say to pray about? Steps 3. Step 2, if you can't just even get willing. Step 2, God, make me willing to be willing. Step 6, I want to be ready. I'm ready to give this to you. I'm just not quite through the door. Help me get to the door. Help me to get step 7, to humbly ask you to take this from me or help me with this. And they go, how do you do it? That's all you do. I mean, I used to think it was like, I didn't know what was going on there, but really step 7, I mean, it's just stop, be humble enough to go, man, I don't know how to do this. Oh, here I am being an asshole again. And hey, God, can you take this? Oh, 5 minutes later, it's back again. Okay, I'm back again. Take it. And there's something powerful in that energy that's starting to create momentum for yourself. And then you clear space, and you get more space to let more answers come, and more information, and more revealing of, wow, how did I get this way? How did I end up killing a man, assaulting this woman, kidnapping this family, blah, 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 whatever the crimes are there. It's all the same crime. And I don't mean to marginalize it for anybody. It really just is all, us not loving each other and attacking our brother and sister. But anyway, Joe, last word for you. It's your book.
Yeah, I just want to say everything you said there, Elizabeth, is excellent. That kind of puts everything together. What Michael said about living the change, that's the key. If you live it, you don't have to, go in the day room and study 10 to 12 hours a day, because you're living it, so you can just talk about it, and that's the beauty of it at the end. If you live it, you know what? You can just sit down in the hearing room. You don't have to stay up till 2 a.m. studying. I don't know what the heck they're studying, but you live it. It becomes part of you. It's like you go in there and they ask you, well, how do you ride a bicycle? You do it without even thinking. And if you can get to that point, you got it nailed. So that's my final word.
Love it. Tell me what the next chapter is for next week. Well, mostly for
a detailed
Michael.
Relapse prevention plan. Don't go to the hearing without it.
Love it. Relapse prevention planning, another, subcategory of insights. So I love that you guys love this new time, the old time, which I made the new time from the old time because 10 o'clock seems to fit everybody better. And so we'll see you next week. Joe, feel free to call me anytime. Michael, feel free to call me anytime. And
right.
Have a wonderful Sunday.
Thank you. Everybody there, do the same, please.
Okay. And Michael, get your book. Geared up because we're going to be we're closing up this 36 strategies. I think we're maybe a month or two out. So you better get
we're like on the final lap.
Yeah, we're on the final lap. So we're going to be counting on you next.
Right.
I'll mute you.
As soon as I get the final edit done on this one, I will send you all a copy.
Great. Looking forward to it, Michael. All right.
See you later.
Looking forward
to it, Michael.
Bye-bye.